Imagine a pain so intense that it feels like a lightning bolt is striking your jaw every time you breathe. Every heartbeat sends a pulse of agony through your skull, a throbbing rhythm that makes it impossible to think, eat, or sleep. You reach up to touch your cheek, and it's hot, swollen, and tender. In today's world, you'd pick up your phone, call a clinic, and within hours, a professional in a sterile mask would numb the area and solve the problem. But you aren't in the modern world. You are standing in a windswept valley 10,000 years ago. There are no painkillers, there is no anesthesia. There is only you, the unbearable pressure in your gum, and a friend holding a piece of sharpened flint. How would you survive? How did our ancestors for tens of thousands of years manage to keep their teeth from rotting out of their heads, or worse, killing them through infection? You've probably been told that ancient people had terrible teeth and died young, but the truth is far more complex and much more terrifying. Our ancestors were performing oral surgery long before they invented the wheel. They were filling cavities with beeswax and drilling into jawbones with stone tools while the mammoths still roamed the earth. To understand how we got here, you have to understand when the nightmare truly began. If you look at the skulls of our earliest hunter-gatherer ancestors, you might be surprised to find that their teeth were often nearly perfect. They didn't have toothbrushes, but they also didn't have sugar. They ate tough, fibrous plants and lean meats. This diet acted like a natural abrasive, scrubbing their teeth clean as they chewed. But then, everything changed. About 12,000 years ago, humans discovered farming. We started eating grains, starches, and soft carbohydrates. Suddenly, our mouths were flooded with sugar. The bacteria in our mouths threw a party, producing acid that ate through enamel. And for the first time in human history, the toothache became a universal human experience. Imagine the desperation of that first farmer with a massive cavity. The agony would have been a new kind of torture, and when humans are desperate, they get creative. In a cave in Italy, archaeologists found a tooth that is 14,000 years old. When they looked at it under a high-powered microscope, they saw something incredible. The decayed interior of the tooth had been deliberately chipped away using tiny, razor-sharp flint tools. Someone had sat there, possibly for hours, scraping out the rot from a living person's mouth. This is the oldest known evidence of dentistry, and it happened before the invention of pottery. But scraping was just the beginning. As civilizations grew, so did the sophistication of their tools. In the Indus Valley, about 9,000 years ago, people were using bow drills. These were the same tools used to start fires or drill beads for jewelry. Imagine the sound of a wooden bow being sawed back and forth, spinning a flint-tipped drill at high speeds. Now imagine that drill being pressed into your molar. It's a terrifying thought, yet the evidence shows that these ancient dentists were incredibly precise. They were drilling holes into the center of decayed teeth to relieve pressure and remove infection. They weren't just pulling teeth, they were trying to save them. The question then becomes, once you've drilled a hole in a tooth, how do you stop it from filling up with food and rotting further? You need a filling. In a cave in Slovenia, researchers found a 6,500-year-old jawbone with a tooth that had a strange, yellowish substance inside a crack. It turned out to be beeswax. This is the world's oldest dental filling. The beeswax was likely melted and poured into the tooth to provide a protective seal and reduce pain. It was a remarkably effective solution, as beeswax has natural antibacterial properties. As we move forward into the era of the Great Pyramids, the Egyptians took things a step further. They were the first to write down their dental recipes. Imagine flipping through a papyrus scroll and finding a cure for a loose tooth. Their solution: a mixture of ground-up honey, ochre, and incense applied as a paste to hold the tooth in place. If the tooth was too far gone, they would use gold wire to bind it to the healthy teeth next to it, creating a primitive bridge. They even experimented with the first toothpastes, using a mixture of crushed eggshells, pumice, and ashes. It would have been incredibly gritty and probably tasted terrible, but it shows a desperate desire for oral hygiene that mirrors our own. But ancient dentistry wasn't always about health. Sometimes it was about status and beauty, regardless of the pain involved. If you were a member of the Mayan nobility 1,500 years ago, your smile was your resume. The Mayans were masters of cosmetic dentistry. They would use stone drills to create perfectly round holes in the front of their incisors. Then, Using a powerful natural adhesive made from plant resins and crushed bone, they would inlay the holes with precious stones like jade, turquoise, or hematite. Think about the skill required for that. If they drilled just a fraction of a millimeter too deep, they would hit the nerve, causing unimaginable pain and a massive infection that could lead to death. Yet, they did this repeatedly, and the evidence shows that many of these inlays stayed in place for the person's entire life. It was a high-stakes game of beauty that makes modern braces look like child's play. While the Mayans were perfecting the blinged-out smile, the Etruscans in ancient Italy were becoming the world's first true prosthodontists. They created elaborate gold bridges to replace missing teeth. They would take a tooth from a donor or sometimes even a cow and use gold bands to solder it into the gap in a person's mouth. These weren't just for eating. They were a display of immense wealth. Only the elite could afford to have someone else's tooth wired into their own jaw. However, for most of human history, the why behind tooth decay remained a mystery. And where there is mystery, there is superstition. For nearly 2,000 years, across almost every culture from Mesopotamia to China to Europe, people believed in the tooth worm. They believed that a tiny, microscopic worm lived inside your tooth, gnawing away at the structure from the inside out. When you felt a pulse of pain, that was the worm wiggling. To kill the worm, ancient people went to extreme lengths. In the Middle Ages, dentists, who were often just the local blacksmith or barber, would use smoking treatments. They would burn henbane seeds, which are highly toxic and hallucinogenic, and direct the smoke into the patient's mouth. The patient would start to see things, the pain would dull because of the drugs, and as the seeds burned, they would pop and release little white embryos that looked exactly like tiny worms. The dentist would point to these and say, "Look, the worm has been expelled." It was a brilliant piece of theater, but it did nothing to stop the rot. If the smoke didn't work, the next step was much more brutal. This was the era of the barber surgeon. If you had a toothache in the 14th century, you went to the same man who cut your hair. You would sit in a regular chair, someone would hold your head still, and the barber would reach for a tool called the pelican. It looked like a bird's beak and was designed to grip the tooth and lever it out of the gum by force. There was no numbing. There was only the sound of bone cracking and the taste of iron. Many people died not from the toothache itself, but from the shock of the extraction or the massive infection that followed the use of dirty tools. It's easy to look back at these practices and feel a sense of horror, but there is also something deeply impressive about it. Our ancestors weren't just victims of their biology, they were fighters. They experimented with every herb, every mineral, and every tool at their disposal to fight back against the one thing that could turn a brave warrior into a weeping child, a rotted molar. In ancient Rome, they took hygiene to a level that might make you gag. They valued white teeth so much that they used human urine as a mouthwash. Why? Because urine contains ammonia, a natural cleaning agent. It was so effective that the Romans actually imported urine from Portugal, believing it was the strongest in the empire. They would swish it around to bleach their teeth and strengthen their gums. As disgusting as it sounds to us, it was a logical use of the chemistry they had available. But what if you didn't want to use urine or a blacksmith's pliers? Some cultures look to the natural world for more magical cures. There are ancient texts suggesting that if you caught a frog under a full moon and spat into its mouth while telling it to take your pain away, you would be cured. Others suggested rubbing a dead man's tooth against your own or wearing a bag of spider legs around your neck. These were the actions of people pushed to the very brink of their sanity by chronic pain. As the centuries rolled on, the shift from magic to science was slow and bloody. By the 18th century, we started to see the first tooth keys, a more refined but still terrifying version of the barber's pliers. It wasn't until the mid-1800s that we finally discovered the miracle of anesthesia. Before that, every single dental procedure you can imagine, every cleaning, every drilling, every extraction, was done while the patient was fully conscious and screaming. When you look in the mirror tonight and brush your teeth, take a moment to look at those white structures in your jaw. They are the same teeth that your ancestors risked their lives to save. They are the reason for the first drills, the first fillings, and the first surgeries. We often think of history as a series of wars and kings, But it is also a history of small, private battles against pain. Ancient humans didn't have dentists, but they had a will to survive that drove them to do the impossible. They scraped, they drilled, they wired, and they filled. They turned the stones of the earth and the wax of the bees into medicine. The next time you sit in that reclining chair at the dentist's office and hear the high-pitched whine of the drill, don't be afraid. Instead, remember the person in the Italian cave 14,000 years ago, holding a piece of flint and a prayer, and realize just how far we have come to make the lightning stop. The story of dentistry is the story of human ingenuity in the face of absolute agony. It's a reminder that even when things seem hopeless, we have always found a way to fix what is broken. But it also leaves us with a haunting question. What are we doing today that will look just as barbaric and primitive to people 10,000 years from now? Are our modern drills and implants the beeswax of the future? Only time will tell, but for now, be thankful for the sterile room, the numbing needle, and the fact that you don't have to spit into a frog's mouth to find relief. The evolution of oral care is a testament to our resilience. From the first hunter-gatherers with their pristine, sugar-free smiles to the Mayan kings with their jade-encrusted teeth, our mouths have been a canvas for our survival and our status. We have moved from flint to steel, from urine to fluoride, and from superstition to science. But the core of the experience remains the same. We are still that same human trying to protect ourselves from the sharpest pain the body can produce. Think about the sheer bravery it took to be that first dentist, to see a friend in pain and decide to take a tool to their mouth, knowing that one wrong move could be fatal. To have the steady hand and the vision to see a solution where there was only suffering. That is the true legacy of ancient dentistry. It wasn't just about teeth. It was about the birth of care, the birth of medicine, and the refusal to let pain win. So, the next time you feel a slight twinge in your gum, don't just think about the appointment you need to make. Think about the thousands of years of trial and error, the millions of people who lived and died with the tooth worm, and the incredible journey of discovery that led to the simple, painless reality of modern life. We have conquered the lightning bolt, and in doing so, we have reclaimed our lives from the shadows of ancient agony. Our ancestors did the hard work so that we could finally smile in peace.
If you liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe button for more.